Distinguished members of European Parliament, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure to be here once again among the representatives of the people of Europe. As I am standing here today, the situation in Iran is reaching an explosive state. Last month, a shocking earthquake in the western part of the country took a heavy toll. Nevertheless, it highlighted a number of major realities: the extensive corruption within the regime and its inability and reluctance to help the people. In fear of eruption of the local people's anger, instead of sending any relief, the regime sent revolutionary guards to Kermanshah to suppress uprisings. Another indication of the popular desire for regime change emerged on October 29th, that is known as Cyrus the Great's Day. He declared the world's first human rights charter. The regime's suppressive forces were mobilized to prevent people from gathering from all across the country at the grave of Cyrus the Great in Pasargad. Yet thousands of people traveled long distances towards Pasargad city and confronted the regime. Dear friends, the country's financial structure is about to collapse. 2 weeks ago, the regime's interior minister admitted that about 150 protests take place in the country every day. A nationwide protest movement has been going on for 1 year and growing by people whose assets have been plundered by financial organizations backed by the government. On several occasions, these protests have turned into political protests against the regime de Mullah. In the meantime, the movement calling for justice for the victims of the 1988 massacre, organized actively by the Iranian resistance, has turned into an expansive social movement. The UN Secretary General, in his latest report to the UN General Assembly, acknowledged that the UN has received a large number of complaints from families of the victims. The people of Iran's confrontation with the Mullah's regime is growing every day. What are the Mullahs doing to save their rule? More suppression and executions. Look at the report by the UN Special Rapporteur. Rouhani's promises were nothing but lies intended to create a false sense of hope, to reduce the public's anger and deceive the international community. Indeed, Rouhani's absolute support for the IRGC, repressive conducts at home, its support for terrorist group in the region, and the missile program once again demonstrated Rouhani's true face. These measures, however, are no longer able to contain a nation ready for change. The regime's second means of survival is to increase its meddling abroad. This policy does not reflect the regime's strengths, but its deep internal crisis, which it tries to cover up by meddling in the region. Indeed, it seeks to put up a hollow show of force to discourage the international community from adopting a decisive and firm policy against it. The regime's leaders, including Khamenei, Rouhani, and IRGC commanders, have recently made some revealing remarks that they will continue with their meddling and aggression in the region and support for terrorism in Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Yemen, and other countries. That they will continue to support Assad's dictatorship. That they will continue to fund and arm their proxies and affiliated terrorist forces in the region. That they will continue with their missile program as long as the international community fails to hold the Iranian regime accountable for its destructive behavior or is under the illusion that they can contain the regime by giving concessions. The mullahs will carry on with their dangerous adventures. Honorable members of the European Parliament, the solution is showing firmness, not giving concessions. The regime engaged in the nuclear negotiations and took one step back only and only when it feared that continued international sanctions might spark massive uprisings in Iran. Let me be clear. The EU has unfortunately abandoned its values in order to promote trade with the mullahs. The EU has turned a blind eye on the violations of human rights in Iran. Signing economic contracts with the IRGC, which controls the greater part of Iran's economic sector, is a short-sighted policy that will endanger peace and stability even further. The EU can play a positive role in peace and stability in the Middle East. Here are some concrete steps that must be taken. Hold the Iranian regime accountable for its crimes against the people of Iran and particularly for the massacre in 1988. Condition all trade and commercial relations with the regime on end to executions in Iran. Demand immediate eviction of the IRGC and its proxies from Syria and other countries in the region. Otherwise, they should face harsh consequences. Demand immediate halt to the regime's ballistic missile program. Otherwise, impose sanctions on the regime's access to international banking system. The regime's ballistic missile program is against the people of Iran and designed to create crisis in the region. Failing to deal decisively with the religious fascism ruling Iran will impose a deadly war on the region and the world. The mullahs regime needs Europe for its survival. Dear friends, let me conclude by reminding a historic moment in the history of our country. On December 31st, 1977, US President Jimmy Carter, who was visiting Iran, said, "Iran is an island of stability." 1 year later, US National Security Advisor sent Carter a note saying, "Good news, Iran is not in a revolutionary or even a pre-revolutionary situation." This comment was made only a few months before the Shah was toppled by the Iranian people. There is no doubt the people of Iran will overthrow the mullahs regime. The EU must decide on which side to stand. For years, the majority of representatives of the people of Europe have taken side with democracy and human rights. The people of Iran want fundamental change. Regime change by the Iranian people is within reach. There is a democratic alternative to the mullah's regime, which believes in free elections, gender equality, separation of religion and state, the equal rights for religious and ethnic minorities, and a non-nuclear Iran. Thank you very much.